And welcome back to another daily devotion. I'm Pastor Roy here at Woodlawn Christian Church in Lake City, Iowa, and this devotion is for Friday, March 24th of 2023. We have been working our way through the book of First Corinthians, and today we've gotten to the end of the ninth chapter. Today we're going to look at just the final four verses, verses 24 to 27 in chapter 9, and let's take a look and see what we can come up with for this and what we can apply to our own daily living. So, verses 24 to 27 in chapter 9. Do you not know that in a race all the runners compete, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. While I do not run aimlessly, I do not box as one beating the air, but I pummel my body and subdue it, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. Okay, Paul often does make references to athletic competitions. That's not a surprise. Perhaps Paul was an athlete. We don't know, and perhaps maybe that's the thorn in his side is an injury from athletics. Who knows? I've never heard anybody say that, but probably not. But at any rate, I digress. He often uses athletic events for analogies and for illustrations, and that's an effective thing to do because the Greeks were really into these. Of course, we had the Olympics, and near Corinth, at the Isthmus of Corinth, which was near the city of Corinth, they annually did what they called the Isthmian Games. Can't talk here today. And that was second only to the Olympic Games. These games went on for hundreds of years, centuries, and they persisted on into the 4th century. So these games, and they had gone on for probably 600 years at the time of Paul. So they went on for a long, long time there in Greece or in Greek culture. So Paul's using this as an illustration because everybody can relate to it. And he talks about, do you not know that in a race all the runners compete? Everybody's competing for the same prize. Only one receives the prize. Now, don't think that only one of us is going to get into heaven. That's not what his point is. His point is that you have to continually be on guard. He's been talking about all these liberties he has. It's his right to these things, I should say. But here at the end, he's talking about exercising self-control. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. Now, if you've ever trained for anything, I used to be in powerlifting and different things. If you ever trained for something, you know that especially if you're in an event where you have to make a certain weight class, there's a great deal of self-control that's required to get in the training. It takes a great deal of self-control because you can't always be motivated. You sometimes just have to be dedicated, because you're not always going to be motivated to go work out, and sometimes perhaps maybe you're not motivated to always do the right thing. Maybe you're not always in the mood to sit down and read the Bible, but you need to do it because that's part of your training that you're doing, part of your regiment. And it's exercising self-control. You're controlling yourself and not allowing yourself to just go willy-nilly and let everything just fall apart. And quite honestly, not to get myself in even deeper trouble than I do with theological things, but part of the problem with culture today is that people don't have much self-control. You don't have to look around too much to see that people aren't taking care of themselves. They aren't controlling themselves in any way. An awful lot of people have succumbed to this, whatever, no exercise, no thought about what their diet is, all of that. But I digress. I'm getting off onto a different tangent. But it does apply. And he says, but I pummel my body and subdue it, because he's subduing these urges to not keep up the training, so to say, for his faith, what he needs to do to win the prize. And what he's getting at here is, look at these athletes. They're competing for a ribbon or a wreath that they wear on their head. Though in the Isthmian Games, sometimes at some point in history, they would create statues for the winners, which that's a little more than just a laurel wreath on your head. But nonetheless, it's not something that's going to be around forever. That statue, you're going to die, and that statue, what good is it? Nobody's going to remember who it was of. In a few hundred years, they'll think you were some this, that, or the other thing, and they won't know your name. You will vanish into the dust of history. But we compete for a imperishable prize. We compete for eternity, eternity in the heavenly kingdom, to reside with God in heaven, in the new heaven, the new earth, even beyond that, to the point of resurrection. Not to get into too deep into that theology, that's a whole nother devotion. And I don't do it aimlessly. I don't beat the air, just like like punching the air, but no effect. You run with purpose. You train with purpose. You when they're boxing, the pugilist matches and what have you, they were taking their punches as they needed to, not just throwing them willy-nilly. You have to land them as well in order to win points and also to subdue your opponent. But the biggest opponent we have is, of course, our own self, our own sinful self, our desire for sin. And that's why he says, but I pummel my body and subdue it. He controls his urges, which is not easy, as we all might know. That's why we have so many people that are out of shape and overweight, as we do not to sugarcoat it, because we don't subdue, we don't control ourselves, we don't subdue ourselves. We overeat, we underexercise, and it can be a very real comparison to what's going on here. Or do we overindulge in sin and underindulge in our continuing education about Christianity, our relationship to God, our time in prayer, our time in service? Yeah. But he's worried here at the end. There's a worry here, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. Do you walk the walk, talk the talk? Or do you talk the talk and not walk the walk? Ugh. That's a difficult one, because we're all sinners. We all fall short. So we better do what we can to control ourselves. We better do what we can to get our spiritual selves into shape. And part of that practice is actually, are we exercising self-control in other elements of our lives? That's an important thing, because it's just like anything else. It's just like exercising a muscle. If you use a muscle, it gets stronger. You gain more control over it. You gain the ability to utilize that muscle. And so self-restraint is a muscle in many ways. The muscle is up here, but if you don't use it, you will lose it, and you won't get stronger in your ability to moderate your own behavior. So self-control is something we need to work on, all of us, myself included. And certainly, can be a sin for that one. But we all need to do it. We all need to remember that. We all need to work on that. But here he's using physical to talk about spiritual, is the point here. It's an effective illustration, though, because all of us can look at athletes and see the sacrifice they have to give for something temporary, and what greater sacrifice should we give for something that's eternal. That's Paul's point. All right, I think I've gone on long enough on that one. Next week, on Monday, we will jump into chapter 10 in 1 Corinthians. Please have a blessed day, and please, as I always say, be a blessing to someone today. Best way to do that would be to tell them about Christ. And if you do enjoy these devotions, please do like and subscribe. We'd love to have you back. Share them. We'd love to do that. If you have something nice to say, something constructive, please leave a nice comment. We'd love to hear from you. All right, have a blessed day. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.